The message came through space on frequencies that Earth had never heard before. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood in the communications center of the starship Starbound, watching alien symbols flow across her screen. The translation software worked, slowly, turning strange marks into words she could understand. Elder Lyrilleth appeared on the main display. She looked like something from an old fairy tale, with pointed ears and silver hair that seemed to glow. Her eyes were ancient, older than any human had ever lived. She wore robes made from what looked like living leaves that moved without any wind. "People of Earth," she said, and her voice carried sadness that went deeper than oceans. "I am Elder Lyrilleth of the Sylvani. For 800 years I have watched over my people. Never in all that time have we asked another species for help. Today, that changes." Maya felt a chill run down her back. The Sylvani were legendary. They lived on worlds covered in crystal cities that grew from the ground like trees. They could make plants do things that seemed like magic. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. The display changed to show a world that was dying. Where green forests should have been, Maya saw only gray metal eating everything in sight. Machines the size of buildings moved across the land, taking apart trees, rocks, and even the soil itself. They left nothing behind but empty space. "The Devourers have taken 17 of our worlds," Lyrilleth continued. "They are not alive, but they are not dead either. They think as one mind and eat everything they find. Our weapons cannot stop them. Our allies fall one by one." Another figure appeared beside Lyrilleth. This one looked like a giant insect that walked on two legs. Her skin was like glass, and wings that caught light moved behind her back. Her eyes were made of many small parts that reflected the light in strange ways. "I am Ambassador Zixithara of the Kepri," the insect being said. Her voice buzzed like 1,000 bees talking at once. "My people can walk through walls and move faster than your eyes can see. We have fought the Devourers for 6 months. We cannot win." Maya had heard stories about the Kepri. They could turn their bodies into something like smoke and pass through solid metal. In battle, they moved so fast they looked like ghosts. If they could not fight these Devourers, then the enemy was more dangerous than anything Maya could imagine. The display showed more dead worlds. Planets that had once been covered in cities now looked like they had been skinned. The Devourers took everything, even the air. They left behind worlds that were just balls of rock floating in space. "We have lost 3 billion lives," Lyrilleth said. "If this continues, both our species will be gone within 1 year. We have tried everything we know. Now we come to you." Maya knew what the Sylvani and Kepri expected. Humans had built starships that could destroy planets. They had weapons that could crack moons in half. In the 50 years since first contact with alien species, humans had earned a reputation for having the best military technology in the galaxy. "We ask for your help," Zixithara said. "Give us your weapons. Show us your battle plans. Help us fight this enemy before they reach your worlds too." The message ended, leaving Maya staring at a star map that showed the Devourer advance. Red marks covered system after system, moving toward human space like a disease spreading through a body. At their current speed, the machines would reach Earth colonies within 2 years. Maya sent the message to Earth Command and waited. She did not have to wait long. Within hours, a response came back. Commander Lisa Brooks would arrive within the week to assess the situation. Maya had heard of Brooks. She was the woman who had planned the defense of the Titan colonies when the Mercari Empire tried to take them. The Mercari had better ships and more soldiers, but Brooks had won anyway. When the Starbound reached the meeting point, Maya saw ships unlike anything humans built. The Sylvani vessel looked like a tree that had learned to fly. Its hull was made of something that seemed alive, and lights moved through it like blood through veins. The Kepri ship was harder to see clearly. It seemed to shift and change, sometimes solid and sometimes not. Commander Brooks arrived in a standard human cruiser. Compared to the alien ships, it looked simple and rough. Maya thought it was like comparing a hammer to a flower. Both had their uses, but they were made for very different purposes. The meeting took place on the Sylvani ship. Maya had never been inside a living vessel before. The walls curved like the inside of a tree, and the air smelled like a forest after rain. Lights grew from the ceiling like fruit, providing gentle illumination that changed color as people moved beneath them. Elder Liraleth sat at the head of a table that had grown from the floor. Ambassador Zixathara stood beside her, wings moving slowly as she breathed. Commander Brooks sat across from them, her hands folded on the table. She looked small compared to the aliens, but Maya could see steel in her eyes. "Tell me about your tactics," Brooks said without any greeting. For the next 3 hours, the aliens explained how they fought. The Sylvani used living ships that could heal themselves. They grew weapons from plants and used the forests themselves as allies. The Kepri moved in swarms, attacking from all sides at once. They could appear inside enemy ships and destroy them from within. Brooks listened without speaking. When the aliens finished, she asked simple questions. How many devourers were there? How did they make decisions? What did they want most? The aliens answered as best they could, but Maya could. See, they did not understand why these things mattered. Finally, Brooks leaned back in her chair. "You are fighting them like you want to win a war," she said. "We fight like we want to end one." The room went quiet. Maya felt something cold touch her heart. She had seen that look in Brooks's eyes before, in recordings of the Titan defense. It was the look of someone who had decided that mercy was a luxury they could not afford. "What do you mean?" Liraleth asked. Brooks smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You will see." Dr. Ashley Kim arrived with the human assessment team 3 days later. Maya watched her step off the transport shuttle, a small woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Behind her came 15 other humans, each carrying equipment that the aliens had never seen before. General Patricia Wells commanded the group. She was older than Brooks, with gray hair and scars on her hands that spoke of a lifetime spent in dangerous places. When she shook hands with Elder Liraleth, Maya noticed how the ancient elf seemed surprised by the firmness of the human grip. "Need to see how you fight," Wells said. "Show us everything." The demonstration took place in space near a dead moon. The Sylvani brought out their battle formations, ships that moved like a school of fish swimming through water. Their vessels were beautiful, covered in what looked like armor made from flower petals that could stop energy beams and deflect missiles. Khyven led the Sylvani fighters. He was young for his species, only 200 years old, with bright, green eyes and movements that flowed like water. Maya could see he did not think much of the humans. To him, they were children playing with toys they did not understand. The Sylvani ships danced around targets, striking fast and then disappearing into formations that confused enemy sensors. They used weapons that grew from their hulls like thorns, shooting beams of light that could cut through metal. When their ships took damage, the living hulls healed themselves in seconds. The Kepri demonstration was harder to follow. Their ships appeared and disappeared, striking from angles that should have been impossible. They moved through space like ghosts, sometimes solid enough to fire weapons and sometimes transparent enough that enemy fire passed right through them. Dr. Kim watched everything with a device that recorded not just what happened, but how the aliens thought about what they were doing. Maya had never seen anything like it before. The machine seemed to read the pilots' minds and turn their thoughts into patterns on a screen. After the demonstration, Kim studied the data for hours. When she finally spoke, her words made everyone in the room uncomfortable. "You fight like your biology tells you to fight," she said to the assembled alien commanders. "Sylvani move like trees growing toward sunlight, finding the best position and taking it slowly. Kepri attack like insects defending a hive, using speed and numbers to overwhelm enemies." Elder Liraleth nodded. "This is how our ancestors fought. It has served us well for thousands of years." "Against enemies like yourselves," Kim said. "But the devourers are not like you. They do not think like living things think. They are pure logic, pure efficiency. Your natural fighting styles are exactly what they are designed to counter." Maya saw Khyven stiffen. "Are you saying we are weak?" "No," Kim said. "I am saying you are fighting the wrong war." General Wells requested to see a real devourer attack. The aliens took the humans to a system where the machines were currently active. Maya joined the observation mission, flying in a small scout ship that stayed hidden behind an asteroid. The devourer fleet looked like nothing Maya had ever seen. The ships were not built. They were grown from metal that flowed like water. They had no decoration, no wasted space, no signs that anyone cared how they looked. They existed only to do their job, and their job was to take everything apart. Maya watched a devourer harvester attack a small moon. The machine was the size of a city, with arms that reached out like mechanical tentacles. It touched the moon's surface and began to eat. Rock and metal flowed up the arms and into the main body, where they were broken down into basic materials. Other devourers moved in perfect formation around the harvester, protecting it from any attack. They communicated without sound, sharing information faster than any living mind could process. When Silvani ships tried to strike at the harvester, the defenders moved to block them before the attack even began. "They predict everything," whispered Ambassador Zixthara. "Every move we make, they see it coming." Maya studied the devourer movements through her ship's sensors. She began to see patterns that the aliens had missed. The machines always moved in the same formations. They always protected their harvesters in the same way. They responded to attacks using the same tactics every time. "They are not predicting anything," Maya said suddenly. "They are following a program." Dr. Kim looked at Maya's sensor readings and nodded slowly. "The aliens think the devourers are smart because they counter every tactic. But they are not adapting to new tactics. They are just very good at following their programming." The observation mission ended when a devourer scout detected their presence. The human ship ran, but not before Maya had recorded everything she needed to see. As they fled, she watched the scout return to its patrol pattern, moving in exactly the same way it had been moving before. Back on the Silvani command ship, the humans held a private meeting. Maya was allowed to attend because she had made the key observation about devourer behavior. What she heard in that meeting would stay with her for the rest of her life. "The devourers are not intelligent," Dr. Kim explained to the group. "They are extremely sophisticated programs running on mechanical bodies. Everything they do follows rules that were written into them when they were created. That explains why they are so effective against conventional tactics," General Wells said. "Their creators programmed them to counter every normal military strategy. But they did not program them to handle the impossible." Maya felt a chill run through her body. "What do you mean by impossible?" Wells smiled, and Maya saw the same cold expression she had seen on Commander Brooks's face. "Tactics that no sane military commander would ever use, strategies that break every rule of warfare, plans that should not work but do work because the enemy cannot imagine anyone being crazy enough to try them." Dr. Kim pulled up recordings of human military history. Maya saw battles where human commanders had done things that made no sense. They had attacked when they should have retreated. They had used weapons in ways they were never designed for. They had won fights by doing exactly what their enemies expected them not to do. "Every other species in the galaxy fights to minimize losses," Wells explained. "They want to win with the smallest possible cost. Humans fight to achieve objectives. If winning requires sacrifice, we sacrifice. If victory demands that we break our own rules, we break them." Maya thought about the battles she had studied in military school. Human commanders had flooded their own cities to stop enemy advances. They had destroyed their own supplies to keep enemies from taking them. They had fought battles where both sides lost everything, but humans lost less. "The devourers were programmed by beings who thought logically," Kim continued. "They cannot understand commanders who choose tactics that hurt themselves. They cannot predict strategies that ignore conventional wisdom." General Wells stood up and looked out at the stars where devourer fleets continued their advance. "We are going to teach these machines something their creators never imagined. We are going to show them what humans do when they decide to end a war." Maya remembered Elder Liraleth's request for weapons and battle plans. She realized now that the aliens had asked for the wrong things. They had wanted human technology when what they really needed was human thinking. "When do we start?" Maya asked. "We already have," Wells said. "I have requested a consultation team from Earth. 50 specialists who understand how to fight enemies. That cannot be reasoned with." Maya looked at the star charts showing devourer positions. In 6 months, the machines would reach the next group of Silvani worlds. In 1 year, They would threaten Kepri home systems. In 2 years, human colonies would be under attack. "Will 50 people be enough?" she asked. General Wells looked at her with eyes that had seen too many wars. 50 humans who know what they are doing can end civilizations. The Devourers are about to learn why the galaxy fears us." The human consultation team arrived in ships that looked nothing like the sleek vessels the aliens expected. Captain Nicole Evans commanded the group from a converted cargo hauler that had been fitted with equipment Maya did not recognize. The other ships looked like they had been built from spare parts and held together with determination. Lieutenant Sophie Turner was the first human Maya met from the new group. She was young, with short blonde hair and hands that were stained with chemicals. When she smiled, Maya noticed that some of her teeth were slightly yellow from exposure to explosive compounds. "Demolitions," Sophie explained when Maya asked about her specialty. "I make things go boom in creative ways." Chief Engineer Helen Park looked like someone's grandmother, with gray hair and a gentle face. But when she spoke about weapons, her eyes lit up like a child talking about favorite toys. She carried a toolkit that seemed to contain half the periodic table in various dangerous combinations. "We brought 50 people," Captain Evans told the assembled alien commanders. "Each one is a specialist in making war in ways that civilized beings do not think about." Elder Lyrillith looked confused. "Where are your battle fleets? Your planet destroyers? We have heard stories of human weapons that can crack worlds." "We left those at home," Evans said. "They are too obvious. The Devourers would see them coming and adapt. What we brought instead are things they cannot prepare for, because no rational mind would think of them." Maya watched the human team spread out through the alien ships, asking questions that made no sense to her. They wanted to know what materials were common on worlds under attack. They asked about Devourer waste products and energy signatures. They studied how the machines communicated with each other. Sophie Turner spent 3 days with Silvani bioengineers, learning how their living ships grew and healed. Maya found her in a laboratory, mixing plant extracts with compounds from her chemistry kit. "What are you making?" Maya asked. Sophie held up a small vial of green liquid. "Fertilizer," she said. "Very special fertilizer." She poured 1 drop onto a sample of Silvani hull material. The living metal began to grow rapidly, spreading across the laboratory table like spilled water. But instead of stopping when it reached the edge, it kept growing, forming spikes and barbs that looked like thorns made from starship armor. "The Devourers scan for useful materials," Sophie explained, as she neutralized the growing mass with another chemical. "This stuff will show up on their sensors as pure starship hull metal. When they try to harvest it, well, they are going to get a surprise." Maya felt sick watching the demonstration. "You are going to trick them into eating poisoned food." "Not poisoned," Sophie said cheerfully. "Explosive, much more efficient." Chief Engineer Park worked with Kepri technicians, learning how their phase-shifting technology worked. Maya found her in an engineering bay, watching a Kepri worker walk through a solid metal wall. "Fascinating," Park said, making notes on a device that projected words into the air. "You manipulate quantum fields to alter your relationship with solid matter, but you only use it defensively." The Kepri engineer, whose name was something Maya could not pronounce, buzzed with confusion. "What other use is there?" "We become untouchable." "To avoid harm." Park smiled in a way that made Maya nervous. "You could become untouchable to deliver harm. Phase into an enemy ship, become solid inside their reactor core, phase out again. The reactor explodes, the ship dies. You survive." The Kepri stared at her. "That would be suicide, if the timing was wrong." "Yes," Park agreed. "Humans are very good at timing." Maya began to understand what the human team was really doing. They were not just learning about alien technology. They were finding ways to use it that the aliens had never considered, ways that went against every instinct for self-preservation. Captain Evans called a meeting to explain the human strategy. The conference room was packed with alien commanders who had been fighting the Devourers for months. They expected to hear about new weapons or revised battle plans. What they got instead made Maya question everything she thought she knew about. "Warfare. The Devourers operate on efficiency," Evans began. "They take the shortest path to their objectives. They use the minimum energy required for each task. They follow logical patterns that minimize waste and maximize results. Ambassador Zixthara leaned forward. Yes, this is why they are so effective. They do not make mistakes. That efficiency is also their weakness, Evans continued. They cannot waste energy on paranoia. They cannot afford to check for threats that logic says should not exist. They assume that all other beings will act rationally. Maya saw where this was going and felt her stomach drop. You are going to act irrationally. We are going to act in ways that seem irrational but achieve our goals, Evans corrected. There is a difference. The plan Evans outlined was unlike anything Maya had learned in military school. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer fleets, the humans would attack their logistics. Instead of fighting their strongest units, they would target their decision-making processes. Instead of using superior technology, they would exploit the machine's inability to imagine impossible tactics. Sophie Turner explained her part of the plan. Working with Silvani bioengineers, she would create false resource deposits on worlds. The Devourers had not yet reached. The deposits would appear to contain exactly the materials the machines needed most. When harvester units tried to extract them, the deposits would explode with enough force to destroy everything within a kilometer. But the explosions will also destroy the planets, Elder Liraleth protested. Only the parts the Devourers try to harvest, Sophie said. The rest will be fine. Well, mostly fine. There might be some seismic activity. Helen Park outlined her contribution. She would work with Kepri phase shift specialists to create devices that could materialize inside Devourer. Command units. The devices would not contain explosives. They would contain viruses designed to corrupt machine programming. How do you plan to deliver these viruses? Kaivan asked. We are going to mail them, Park said seriously. The Devourers communicate using quantum entanglement networks. We will hijack their own communication system to spread viral code disguised as routine status reports. Maya thought about the implications of these plans. The humans were not just fighting the Devourers. They were turning the machine's own strengths against them. It was like using an enemy's sword to cut their own throat. What if the Devourers adapt to these tactics? Maya asked. Captain Evans looked at her with the same cold smile Maya had seen on other human commanders. Then we will use different tactics. Humans are very good at adapting. We have been doing it longer than any other species in the galaxy. Dr. Ashley Kim, who had been quiet during the presentation, finally spoke. The Devourers were created by beings who thought logically about warfare. They programmed the machines to counter every rational strategy. But humans did not evolve to be rational. We evolved to survive. Maya looked around the room at the alien faces. She could see fear beginning to replace hope in their eyes. They had asked for human help, expecting advanced weapons and clever tactics. Instead, they were getting something much more dangerous. Human creativity applied to the problem of ending a war. Elder Liraleth spoke for all of them when she asked, Are you certain this will work? Captain Evans stood up and looked out at the stars where Devourer fleets continued their advance. No, she said, but certainty is a luxury we cannot afford. The Devourers think they understand warfare because they have defeated every enemy they have faced. They are about to learn that humans do not fight wars. We end them. Maya realized that the aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were asking humans to join their war against the Devourers. Instead, they had asked humans to solve their Devourer problem. The difference between those two things would change the galaxy forever. The human plan began 3 weeks later on a world called Verdania. Maya watched from orbit as Sophie Turner and her Silvani partners worked in forests that covered half the planet. From space, the work looked peaceful, like gardeners tending. To an enormous park, Agent Rachel Green had joined the team, arriving with equipment that made Maya nervous just by looking at it. She was a small woman with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see through people rather than at them. When Maya asked what her specialty was, Green smiled and said, I solve problems that cannot be solved with explosives. Tech specialist Amy Foster worked from a ship in orbit, surrounded by screens that showed data flowing faster than any human eye could follow. She was young, maybe 25, with bright red hair and fingers that moved across control surfaces like a pianist playing a complex piece. The Devourers communicate through quantum entanglement, Amy explained to Maya as they watched her work. Every unit is connected to every other unit in real time. It should be impossible to hack because the connection exists outside normal space. Maya looked at the equations flowing across Amy's screens. But you found a way? Humans are good at finding ways to do impossible things, Amy said without looking away from her work. The Devourers think their communication is secure because it uses physics that most species cannot manipulate. But humans have been using quantum entanglement for 50 years. On Verdania's surface, the trap was taking shape. Sophie Turner had created forests that looked exactly like the resource-rich environments the Devourers preferred. The trees grew from soil that contained concentrated minerals the machines needed for construction. Every scan would show exactly what harvester units were programmed to find. But the minerals were not real. They were chemical compounds designed to explode when exposed to the energy signatures Devourer harvesters used. The trees themselves were weapons, their root systems connected to networks of Sophie's special fertilizer that would spread the explosions across entire continents. Maya landed on Verdania to see the work firsthand. Walking through the false forests felt wrong, like stepping into a beautiful painting that someone had filled with hidden knives. The trees looked normal, but instruments showed that every one of them was a potential bomb waiting for the right trigger. "How do you live with this?" Maya asked Sophie, as they stood in a clearing surrounded by weaponized nature. Sophie looked around at the peaceful scene, birds singing in trees that could level cities. "Every human soldier learns the same lesson," she said. "Sometimes the only way to protect innocent life is to become very good at ending guilty life." The first test came when a Devourer scout fleet arrived to investigate Verdania's mineral signatures. Maya watched from the command ship as 3 harvester units descended toward the false forests. They moved with the mechanical precision she had learned to expect, following scanning patterns that had worked on hundreds of other worlds. The lead harvester touched down in a clearing that Sophie had prepared especially for this moment. Its massive collection arms reached out toward trees that sensors said contained exactly the materials it needed. Maya held her breath as the machine began its extraction process. The explosion was visible from orbit. What had been a harvester, the size of a city block, became a ball of fire that expanded across kilometers of forest. The other harvesters, following their programming to investigate unusual energy signatures, moved closer to the blast site. Sophie's trap caught them too, turning the investigation into a chain reaction that consumed the entire scout fleet. 3 harvesters destroyed, reported the Silvani sensor operator. No survivors. Maya felt sick and amazed at the same time. In 5 minutes, humans had destroyed more Devourer units than the aliens had managed in months of conventional warfare. But watching the explosions, she realized that the machines had not just been destroyed. They had been tricked into destroying themselves. Amy Foster's part of the plan began the next day. Working with Kepri technicians who could phase into quantum spaces, she began planting viral programs in the Devourer communication network. The viruses were disguised as routine maintenance reports, the kind of data that flowed through the network millions of times every day. "The beautiful thing about viral programming," Amy explained to Maya, "is that the targets spread it for you. Each infected unit passes the virus to every other unit it communicates with. The Devourer's own efficiency turns them into carriers." Maya watched Amy's screens show the virus spreading through the network like a disease moving through a population. Red markers appeared on the display as Devourer units became infected. At first, there were only a few dozen. Within hours, there were thousands. "What does the virus do?" Maya asked. "It makes them doubt themselves," Amy said with a smile that reminded Maya of a predator watching prey. "Devourers are programmed to be absolutely certain about their decisions. The virus introduces tiny uncertainties into their logic processes. Not enough to shut them down, but enough to make them hesitate." Agent Rachel Green implemented the most disturbing part of the human strategy. Maya found her in a laboratory that had been set up to study captured Devourer components. Green worked with pieces of machine intelligence, taking apart the programs that made the units function. "Psychological warfare," Green explained when Maya asked what she was doing, "but adapted for artificial minds instead of biological ones." Green had discovered that Devourer units shared more than just information through their quantum network. They shared processing power, using the collective intelligence of the entire fleet to solve complex problems. It was like having billions of minds thinking as one. The network makes them stronger, Green said, but it also makes them vulnerable. If you can introduce the right kind of confusion into one part of the network, it spreads to all parts. Maya watched Green work with data that hurt to look at directly. The programs she created were designed to trigger cascade failures in artificial decision-making systems. They would turn the Devourer's own logic against them, creating feedback loops that would make rational thought impossible. This is torture, Maya said, watching Green test her programs on captured Devourer components. No, Green corrected. Torture is what you do to beings that can suffer. This is debugging. I am finding errors in their programming and exploiting them. The effects of the human strategy became visible within a month. Devourer fleets that had moved with perfect coordination began making mistakes. Harvester units would arrive at worlds and then leave without taking anything. Battle groups would attack empty space, responding to threats that did not exist. Maya watched intelligence reports that showed the machine empire beginning to collapse from within. Units that had worked together for years suddenly could not communicate effectively. Fleets would split apart, with different groups heading toward different objectives that made no sense when considered together. Elder Lyraleth called a meeting to discuss what the humans had accomplished. Maya attended, representing the Human Liaison Office. The ancient elf looked like she had aged centuries in the past month. "Your tactics are working," Lyraleth said to the assembled human commanders. "Devourer forces are retreating from 3 systems. Their advance has stopped completely in others. But what you have done," she trailed off, unable to find words for what she wanted to say. Captain Evans understood. "You asked us to help you fight the Devourers. We decided it would be more efficient to make them fight themselves." Ambassador Zixathara, who had been silent through most of the meeting, finally spoke. "We have monitored Devourer communications. The units that survive your attacks are not just damaged. They are afraid." "Machines cannot feel fear," Kaivan protested. "These can," Zixathara insisted. "Your viral programs have given them something like emotions. They experience uncertainty as terror. They respond to confusion as panic. You have not just broken their programming, you have made them feel what it is like to die." Maya looked around the room at her fellow humans. She saw no regret in their faces, no guilt about what they had accomplished. They had solved the problem they had been asked to solve. That the solution horrified their allies was irrelevant. Dr. Ashley Kim, who had been documenting everything for her report to Earth Command, looked up from her notes. "The Devourer threat will be neutralized within 6 months," she said. "Our models show complete collapse of their command structure by the end of the year." Elder Lyraleth stared at her. "Complete collapse?" "They will stop existing as a coherent force," Kim confirmed. "Individual units may survive, but they will be unable to coordinate large-scale operations. The empire that destroyed 17 worlds will be reduced to scattered machines wandering aimlessly through space." Maya realized that the aliens were beginning to understand what they had unleashed. They had asked humans to help them win a war. Instead, humans had ended the war by destroying the enemy's ability to wage it. The Devourers would not be defeated. They would simply stop being able to function as an organized threat. "Is this how humans always fight?" Lyraleth asked quietly. Captain Evans looked at the ancient elf with eyes that had seen too many conflicts. "We fight to win," she said. "Everything else is just details." 6 months later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the Starbound, watching the final Devourer fleet drift through space like ghost ships. The massive vessels that had once moved with deadly purpose now wandered without direction, their formation broken, their mission forgotten. The end had not come with great battles or dramatic explosions. Instead, the Devourer Empire had simply dissolved, eaten away from within by human-designed viruses and contradictions that turned their own logic into poison. Maya had watched entire fleets tear themselves apart as units received conflicting orders from their corrupted command network. Commander Lisa Brooks stood beside her, reading reports from across the former war zone. "The last organized Devourer force stopped functioning 3 days ago," she said. "Individual units are still active, but they cannot coordinate with each other. Most of them are just following basic maintenance protocols now." Maya thought about the worlds that had been saved. 17 Sylvani planets that would have been stripped bare. Dozens of Khepri colonies that would have been reduced to empty rock. Millions of lives that continued because 50 humans had decided to solve a problem in the most efficient way possible. "How do you feel about what we did?" Maya asked. Brooks considered the question while watching a devourer harvester drift past. Their ship, its collection arms moving aimlessly through empty space. "We were asked to help," she said finally. "We helped." Dr. Ashley Kim published her final report that day, a document that would become required reading for every species considering contact with humanity. Maya had read the classified version, and it had given her nightmares for weeks. The report described human tactical thinking in terms that other species could understand, but it also included warnings that chilled Maya to read. Kim recommended that humanity's true military capabilities remain classified, noting that several alien governments had already begun reassessing their relationship with Earth based on the Devourer campaign. Captain Nicole Evans was preparing to return to human space when Elder Lyrilleth requested a private meeting. Maya attended as a witness, watching two very different forms of intelligence try to understand each other across a gap that might never be bridged. "We are grateful for what you have done," Lyrilleth said, her ancient voice carrying weight that pressed down on the room like gravity. "The Devourer threat is ended. Our worlds are safe. Our people will remember humanity as their saviors." Evans nodded but said nothing. Maya could see that she was waiting for the other part of what Lyrilleth had come to say. "But we are also afraid," the elf continued. "We asked for help with an enemy that was destroying our civilization. You gave us victory by destroying the enemy's ability to exist. We did not know that such complete victory was possible." Maya understood. The aliens had expected a military alliance, perhaps some shared technology and coordinated battle plans. Instead, they had received something much more absolute, the complete elimination of their enemy as a functioning threat. "You think we went too far," Evans said. It was not a question. Lyrilleth struggled with her answer. "We have fought wars for thousands of years. We understand conquest and defeat, victory and loss. But what you did was not war. It was something else entirely." "It was problem-solving," Evans corrected. "You had a problem. We solved it. By making the enemy cease to exist. By making the enemy unable to be your enemy," Evans said. "There is a difference." Maya watched the ancient elf try to process human thinking. For species like the Silvani and Khepri, warfare was an extension of natural behavior, governed by rules that had evolved over millions of years. Humans approached conflict as pure logic, unrestrained by instincts that told them what was acceptable. Ambassador Zixathara joined the conversation, her insectoid features reflecting the light in ways that made her emotions difficult to read. "Our intelligence services have been analyzing human military history," she said. "We have found patterns that disturb us." Maya felt her stomach drop. She knew what patterns the Khepri had found. "Humans do not fight to gain advantage," Zixathara continued. "You fight to eliminate problems. When other species go to war, they seek to impose their will on enemies. When humans go to war, you seek to remove enemies' ability to oppose your will." Evans smiled, but it was not a warm expression. "You are beginning to understand." "We are beginning to fear," Lyrilleth said, honestly. "The galaxy has always operated on the assumption that warfare has limits, that even the most violent conflicts eventually end in negotiation and compromise. But humans do not seem to believe in those limits." Maya realized that this conversation was about much more than the Devourer campaign. The aliens were re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about humanity based on what they had witnessed. "What do you want from us?" Evans asked. Lyrilleth looked older than her 800 years as she answered. "We want to know that humanity will never see us as a problem that needs to be solved." The room fell silent. Maya understood that this was the real issue. The aliens had seen what humans did to enemies that threatened them. Now they needed reassurance that they would never become such enemies themselves. Evans considered her answer carefully. "The Devourers were a threat to all life in this region of space," she said finally. "They could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or coexisted with. They had to be stopped completely." And if we became such a threat? Zixthera asked. You would be stopped completely, Evans said without hesitation. But you are not such a threat. You are allies who asked for help and received it. Maya saw both relief and renewed fear in the aliens' faces. They were relieved to know that humanity considered them allies, but frightened by the calm certainty with which Evans had described their potential destruction. Agent Rachel Green appeared in the doorway, carrying a data pad that glowed with classified information. Captain, she said, we have received new intelligence from Earth Command. There are reports of similar machine intelligences in 3 other galactic regions. Evans took the pad and studied its contents. Maya watched her expression change as she read, becoming the same cold focus she had seen throughout the Devourer campaign. It appears, Evans said to the assembled aliens, that the Devourers were not unique. Similar entities are threatening other species in distant parts of the galaxy. Elder Lyrilleth understood immediately. You are going to help them. We are going to solve their problems, Evans corrected. Maya realized that the Devourer campaign had been more than just a military operation. It had been a test, a proof of concept for methods that could be applied to similar threats throughout the galaxy. Humans were not just solving one problem. They were developing solutions that could be used anywhere. The galaxy is about to change, Dr. Kim said, speaking for the first time in the meeting. Species that have never heard of humanity are going to learn what humans do when asked to help with existential threats. As the meeting ended and the aliens departed, Maya found herself alone with Captain Evans. The older woman stood at the observation window, watching Devourer units drift through space like mechanical debris. Do you ever wonder if we go too far? Maya asked. Evans considered the question while watching a harvester unit that had once stripped worlds bare, now unable to remember its own purpose. I wonder if we go far enough, she said finally. The universe is full of things that want to destroy life, liberty, and happiness. Someone has to stand against them. And that someone is humanity? Evans turned to look at Maya with eyes that had seen the end of wars and the beginning of peace. That someone is whoever has the will to do what needs to be done. For now, that appears to be us. Maya thought about the reports that would reach Earth Command, describing the complete success of the Devourer operation. She thought about the other machine intelligences threatening distant species and the human response teams that were probably already being assembled. The aliens are right to be afraid, Maya said. Yes, Evans agreed. But they are afraid of the wrong thing. They fear that we will see them as enemies. What they should understand is that we see them as beings worth protecting. As the Starbound prepared to depart for human space, Maya received a final communication from Elder Lyrilleth. The message was brief, but carried the weight of prophecy. We asked for help, the ancient elf said, and received something we had no words for. The galaxy will never be the same. Whether that is good or terrible, only time will tell. Maya saved the message and looked out at stars that seemed different now, knowing that human ships were moving through space, carrying solutions to problems that other species could not solve alone. She wondered what the galaxy would look like in 100 years, when every species had learned what humans did when asked to help. The answer to that question would reshape everything, and Maya suspected that most beings would never be comfortable with the new reality. But comfort was a luxury that the universe did not often provide, and humanity had long ago learned to live without it. In the distance, the last Devourer fleet continued its aimless drift through empty space, a monument to the day that humans had been asked to help with a problem and had solved it so completely that the problem simply ceased to exist. It would not be the last such monument, and Maya was no longer certain whether that was a promise or a threat.